Hey guys, Carl here, Cultivate with Carl, and it is time for your fall garden update. The Squirrel Patrol is in full effect, and they did not start jumping on me till right before I fired up this video. So they're doing fine. Squirrel Patrol's doing good, even though they test my patience on a daily basis. There you go. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I haven't seen you in a few weeks, and boy, what a change a few weeks has made. We went from 100 degrees and no rain for months, and it is now 58 degrees today, and we have had nothing but rain for the last couple weeks. And boy, has it made a difference. If you can see around me, there's a lot of green on both sides of the path, and things are happening, things are popping, going pretty well. We got our onions doing good. We got our surprise tomato plant doing really well. Our potatoes have hit a critical stage in their growth, and we're going to talk about that when we review the garden beds. There's something growing in the compost pile. I don't even know what that is, but it's big. But things are growing again, and that's wonderful because that heat sure took it out of us. Okay, Rube, thanks for playing, hon. You're a good dog. You're wonderful. Yep, you too, Gunner. See, this is what happens. They're distraction devices. So, fall gardens, the way that this season rolled out, and I know we talked about this a little on the last video, was the heat stayed, and it wasn't as much the heat in the fall as it was the drought, because the drought was very persistent. And in fact, over on the wall, I have a timer on my watering system, and I could not keep up with the heat versus the moisture in the garden. The garden beds dried out except for the core, which really wrecked the soil pretty bad. So when I did actually put plants in the ground, they did not do well. They did not thrive because the soil was bad, and it was hard to maintain moisture levels that were consistent with getting healthy plants to grow into the fall. So that was the point at which I decided that I wasn't doing a fall garden, that I was just going to hold out and try and recoup my beds, rebuild my beds and prepare for the spring. And then that's why we haven't had a lot of videos. But one of the side things that did happen, I went one day to my pantry and all my potatoes had sprouted. And so there they were with all their eyes and their little tentacles laid out. I had to do something with them or I was going to have to throw them out. And so I decided to go ahead and plant them. And we're going to check on that status today. So you saw in the last video where we had just planted them. I think it's been about a month, even though I said we'd be back in 2 weeks. Been about a month. And so we're going to do a garden tour today. And then we're gonna go look at the compost pile, and that's about all we got. So what I anticipate after the garden tour is I'll probably come back from a potato harvest video, because I think it's gonna be, this is November 29th, Wednesday, November 29th. The plants are getting to the point, and we'll talk about this, the plants are starting to die back. So into December, probably about Christmas, it's going to be time to harvest potatoes. And so the next video you get will probably be about Christmas, or not about Christmas, but it'll be around Christmas with me harvesting potatoes. So let's switch around and let's do the garden tour, and we could talk about what we've got going on. So give me a second. All right, guys, look at this bed. This bed is going crazy. These are my bunching onions, and these tops are ready to eat. Like if I was going to do baked potato, or if I was going to do a stir fry, I could come out here and harvest some of these tops. They smell wonderful, and they're really doing good. The soil in this bed was always good. And in fact, if you look over here, this is where we have the surprise tomato plant. Now, I do not know what variety of tomato this is, but you can see we got some big ones here with some bug damage, but we got some of the flowers. Last night it got down to 38, so we may lose some of these flowers, but I'm gonna let that plant go, because it could be that come Christmas, we have Christmas tomatoes, and I think that'd be spectacular. Like again, I said, I have no idea what variety they are. Probably gonna say it was probably one of the bigger varieties, looking at those two over there. Probably indeterminate type, I don't know, we'll see. But the onion bed is doing wonderful. The benefit of this, being bunching onions, come spring, what I'll be able to do is pull them out and divide them. Being that they're doing so well, I'll be able to hand them out to people and then use some to eat, and then I'll just replant the other half. Booyah. Okay, here's the first of the potato beds, and these were, I believe, the Caribe potatoes. And these were going to be medium-sized spuds that were good for broiling and mashing. And they have certainly done the good work. Now, if you notice that all the plants, check the plants out, they're all laying down. And this is right before the tops start to die off. So at this point, the spuds are forming underneath, and the plants are beginning to push the nutrients and stuff down to the spuds. And so if you've seen potatoes before, what's going to happen is all this vegetation up top is going to die off, and we're going to basically end up with a flatbed with some potatoes on the top. So hopefully not too many, because we don't want them to be exposed to the sun. So this is the beginning of the end of the potatoes before the harvest. Now this over here, there's the Squirrel Patrol eating grass and itching themselves. I mean, there you go. That's what you get paid security, you know, the Squirrel Patrol. So right here, these were russet potatoes. And these are going to be bacon potato sized potatoes. There weren't as many, and that's why there isn't as many plants. And so, but they're doing good. But they're all starting to lay over as well. So you can start to see them lay over. And we will get russets out of here. And these were actually good potatoes, really good ones. So let's go take a look at the potatoes on the fence. Okay, we got a thing that's happening here that's cool. You can see the potatoes are flowering. Now, there's a couple schools of thought, and one of them says, if I come in here and I cut off these flowers, that we will get more potatoes. You know, in fact, there have been a couple YouTube channels that have put this to the test and done tests and all this kind of stuff, and sure enough, but also at this time, there are still some pollinators left, some butterflies, and them little fellas need something to eat. So I'm going to leave those flowers be. You know, if I were starving and I needed more potatoes, I would absolutely do some more. You know, I would cut them off to make more potatoes. But as it is, I think I'm going to get enough potatoes, and everything's going to be fine. So from here over, these first few barrels are the red Nordland potatoes, the little red potatoes. And so they will, I eat those first usually. And then when we get over here, we eat the Yukon Golds. And so you can start to see how all the Yukon Gold plants are laying over. They were big and puffy. Some of the pots you can see there has grass in them. That was intentional. That's some of the cover crops that I planted, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But anyway, this is the rest of the potatoes. And then we're going to look down the fence. The bell peppers have pretty much given it up. I think it's time to go ahead and strip the bell peppers out of their pots. I need to get the rosemary into a bigger pot. It's doing really well. These were some of the jalapenos. And the tomato plants, the other volunteer tomato plants, have all died, as have the currants. They both died. And my flowers, the zinnias, they died, but we'll plant more of them. And then you can see, like, man, I'll be honest with you, look, here's all these shishito peppers, and then, or these jalapenos. These are jalapenos. I haven't even picked them. I just haven't been out here that much, but the jalapenos did really well this year. This is a tomato plant. The eggplants that never produced. And then another tomato plant that's just struggling to make it. And if you can see here, that's where I had the sweet potatoes. And all that stuff on top, that is cover crop. That is actually ryegrass. And we're going to go over here on the beds, and we're going to talk about the cover crops I have for the beds I'm not using. So let's do that next. Okay, guys, here we go. Here is the Squirrel Patrol, and the Squirrel Patrol has just been really desiring attention from me today. We are losing sunlight like it's going out of style. Hopefully the camera is keeping up, but the sun is down at the horizon at this point, and you know, it's only 4:42, but it's winter, so that's what we get. All right, here, Zone 9A, Mississippi Gulf Coast, 2 blocks off the beach of the Gulf of Mexico. you know, we are into officially our winter. Winter is not very stout here in the South. That's why a lot of people move down here, which allows us really to grow all season long. Like if I wanted to, I could have planted broccoli and, you know, cauliflower and stuff like that and grown right through. Our cold time here really is like late January, February, and then we roll into March 1st. We can actually plant March 1st, even though our official no later than frost date is usually about June. But you can put stuff in the ground on March. You just got to be prepared to cover it because you're going to get 1 or 2 more frost. Anyway, let's talk about cover crops. So my thought process with this winter was that the beds had taken such a beating over the summer that I really need to do something to get the nutrients back in the soil for the spring. And so I did some amendments. I added some bone meal, blood meal. I added some 10-10-10 fertilizer, some alfalfa, and a couple other amendments, some Solomon's Gold, which is a mix that David the Good uses of different minerals and nutrients that helps your soil make a comeback. If you've ever been interested in redoing your soil, go look up David the Good and look up Solomon's Gold. And it's just a lot of minerals and nutrients that give your soil a boost to make your production better and make your fruits and vegetables more healthy. But I was watching a video, and it's from Lazy Dog Farms, and Travis is the guy's name. And he has a video. He's out of Georgia, and he's over in Georgia down I-10, but he's in the next grow zone up, which I think is 8A or 8B. He's just north of I-10, where I'm south of I-10. And Travis is a big believer in cover cropping. And so having watched this video now for a few years, I thought that I would give it a try this year because my beds were in such a state of disarray. And after reading into it a little bit and after watching him have success with it, I went ahead and decided to try. And the 3 things that I'm cover cropping with are, first of all, hairy vetch, which is a plant. It's kind of thin. You can see them interdispersed here. And hairy vetch and ryegrass are nitrogen absorbers, and they will pull air, they'll pull oxygen, or they do photosynthesis. They pull out stuff from the air, they make nitrogen, push it to their roots. This is a very rudimentary explanation about what they do. But then when you come in and you harvest them, when you cut them down and they deteriorate in the soil, they'll release that nitrogen back into the soil. And so he's commented several times on how those are winners for him. And then the last one that I've got is a mustard, and it's a variety of mustard that's got some heat to it, some capsaicin type stuff, and it attracts nematodes. And so the nematodes are these little microscopic things that help out your roots and stuff. And if you have bad ones, your plants will suffer, but if you have good ones, it helps your plants out. And supposedly this mustard variety is good for your soil. So that, if anything, is going to become a green fertilizer. Now, with the ryegrass will grow anywhere, and it's cold tolerant, and it does a really good job. So a funny story about ryegrass is my family originally is from North Carolina. My dad owned a feed store up there, and he would drive up there when I was a kid in our big brown 72 Bel Air station wagon, and he would bring it back loaded with stuff. And a lot of times it was like big packs of that 2-cent gum that like was super hard to chew, and the flavor lasted like 10 seconds. But everybody in the 80s, we had that stuff. Anyway, one time he bought back bags of ryegrass, and the ryegrass had spilled in the car, and it spilled along the windowsill. Well, ryegrass is pretty resilient, so that stuff, it hatched, it grew. So what would happen when it would heat up, the condensation would get on the window and the water would run down and would water the ryegrass, and then the ryegrass didn't know any better, so it just kept on growing. So when you looked in the back of our station wagon, all along the back end of the station wagon, we had a nice little terrarium going on in the car. And however it got the nutrients, I have no idea, but it lasted almost a summer. Pretty much had to go out there and trim the ryegrass out the station wagon with the scissors. That is a crazy, crazy thing. But I know if it'll work in station wagons, it'll work in your garden. That's a testament for me, right? So So the ryegrass is here, and the hairy vetch and the mustard. And what I'm hoping when I incorporate this back into the soil in the spring, it's going to make my soil better and ready to receive the spring crops. And the spring crops will be a whole different thing this year. We had a great spring. Things really kicked off, and then the heat hit us. And I learned a lot about heat management. And you'll see in the future, we're going to do a lot of coverings. We're going to make some frames, put in some shade cloth, and so that we can let our garden survive through the summer. But before we can even think about the spring and the summer, we got to get through the winter, and that's what we're doing now. So I'm gonna let this stuff stay out here. We're gonna keep it watered, keep it green, keep it going, and hopefully it will return the favor for us by making our soil better in the spring. As far as the onions, the potatoes, and the tomatoes go, I'm hoping that during the here shortly, we're going to be having an abundance of potatoes. We'll have a couple tomatoes. That would be really sweet. And then we're going to get all those beds cover cropped also. We're probably not going to cover crop the pots. We're just going to let them be. And then we'll redo them in the spring with some new compost and some horse manure compost. And we'll get those things going again. But what do you do for your beds in the fall? Is this what you're doing? Are you cover cropping? Are you growing stuff? Like a lot of people on YouTube are growing things because they got more water than we did in their grow zone. So I don't have a winter cover crop except for the potatoes and the onions, but I'm still pretty happy. So there we go. All right, let's go over and take a look at the compost pile. We got a few unique challenges with it, and then we're gonna call this a video. So let's go look at the compost pile. Okay, check this out. Here in the compost pile, we've got lots of things growing, and it's crazy, but it's part of the process. And really, none of this, I'm not even sure what it is. It doesn't look like tomatoes. I'm not sure what kind of plants it is. It's not basil. But, I've been throwing things in here all year, so there's no telling what it is. People have given me a couple watermelons. George gave me watermelons. They were not good to go. They were a little bit too early. And then one was off the stem a little bit too soon, so they made it into the compost. There's a pumpkin down there. And out in my front yard, I've got several pumpkins from a neighbor. After they were done with their Halloween decorations, they bought their pumpkins over so I could throw them in the compost. And so what I'll do is I'll bring them into here, and then I'll chop them up with a hatchet, and then we'll spray everything good with water. But we've got this compost going. It's doing pretty well. It's no longer cooking. The temperatures are way low. But let's flip you around here. We're going to flip you around. Okay, guys, the compost pile, you see there's a lot going on there with the compost pile, and that's good. It doesn't really matter that there's things growing in the compost pile. All that stuff's going to be incorporated and broke down into the compost. And those plants are probably potato plants, and the potato plants were leftover potatoes from the ones I planted in the garden. Couldn't use them all, but oh, there you go, Squirrel Patrol on alert. So anyway, it's important to have a good compost pile because that's what you're going to use to feed your garden later. And it takes time for it all to break down, so you should be working on your compost piles now. As for me, all of my table scraps, and like if I buy something at the store and it doesn't make it, it all, instead of going to the trash, it will go into the compost. And all that will break down and supply those nutrients back to plants that I can eat later, which I think is a great thing. So the plan is to put up the other two compost piles. I'm going to flip the compost that's in this pile. I'm going to split them up between the three beds, and hopefully I'll be able to get with my connection and get some more the horse manure with the hay, mix it all together. It will heat right up and start doing its thing, and then it will be breaking down into good compost we can use in the spring. So there you go. So yeah, there we are. So it's winter time, fall time, and it's time, gardening's kind of in a low point right now. You guys up north, you probably got snow and stuff. You're not gardening. Guys down here in 9A, 9B, we're still able to garden through the year. And that's a wonderful thing. And I enjoy it, and I know you do too. But I don't think that there's any purpose in me filling you up with useless videos about nothing over the winter, because I'd just be flapping my lips, and there's not any good content there. So what I'm going to do, when I have good content, I'll fill you in. When the potatoes are ready to harvest, I'll come back and we'll harvest potatoes together, see what we got. You know, if I get a few tomatoes, I'll send some pictures. If you're not on my Cultivate with Carl Instagram, I do updates on there a lot. It's just at Cultivate with Carl on Instagram. You'll get pictures of the squirrel patrol, pictures of the garden when I've cleaned up and stuff. And then every once in a while we'll get to YouTube videos here. When the fall prep starts, the volume of videos will pick back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow a lot more plants inside earlier this year so they can hit the gardens a little bit bigger and hardier than normal. And we're going to see where that goes. So I'm pretty excited about that. But it's the holiday season. Thanksgiving just happened. It was wonderful. Family was all good to go. We've decided on a new tradition of putting up everybody's Christmas tree. So each weekend we're traveling to a different family member's house to decorate their house for Christmas. And then come Christmas, we're going to be separated. But, you know, through the means of the internet and stuff, we'll keep in touch. So I want you to keep in touch. So if you haven't already, go ahead and give me the old like and a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. You'll get notifications when I'm doing the show. I'm not doing this for money. I just do this for fun. But if you like the content, if you looked back at some of the other videos and you're like, hey, that's okay, then I'll be putting more of them out when there is actually more information to show you. So until then, you know, it's Carl from Cultivate with Carl with the Squirrel Patrol here in Zone 9A, South Mississippi, Gulf Coast, 2 weeks from the beach, or 2 blocks from the beach. And I'm signing off, and I'm going inside because it's getting cold. So we'll see you next time.